Aljezur. This is a land of history, of great natural riches and cultures. Located in the Sudoeste and Costa Vicentina Natural Park, here we can travel in time from Al-Andalus to Portugal, and we can hop from the sea to the slopes without leaving the same place. Aljezur offers a historical, cultural, and environmental tour with two types of itineraries: an urban part in between the narrow streets and the village houses, and a rural part where we can enjoy nature. The whole tour is signaled in the field, and there is additional information available in a guide with further details on the main points of interest. If we prefer, audio guides are also available. Aljezur is divided by a small river, which runs along a large meadow. The proximity of the running water makes this land fertile, and that is why here we can find a mosaic of crops. Fruits and vegetables, along with Aljezur's sweet potatoes, a product with protected geographical indication, can be bought in the market, where fresh sea products also arrive every day. And this is where our journey begins. Right beside the market is our tour map. The walk begins crossing the pedestrian bridge over the river. On our way to the highest point in the village, where the castle is located, we can find the City Museum of Aljezur. Here we can appreciate pieces of history that are over 10,000 years old, remains of the Islamic presence in Aljezur's county, and remember aspects of the labor at the country and at sea. It is also here that lies what is left of a stone pillar from the 15th century, which was at the time stage for public executions. The Misericordia Church is one of the oldest buildings of the village. It was built in 1577. With the construction of a new mother church after the 1755 earthquake, this modest church of just one nave stopped being the main worship place in Aljezur, but it still holds liturgical celebrations. In the Museum of Sacred Art, we find the old bell from the Misericordia Church. The oldest item in this museum is a Holy Spirit crown, dated from the 14th century. Other pieces of local collections, in accordance to the liturgical calendar, are kept here. In Aljezur, there are several small museums. The Antunian Museum, settled in a former chapel, shows images, engravings, books and medals dedicated to Saint Anthony. Aljezur was the homeland of the painter José Sirgas, who donated his house and all of his artistic assets to the village, so his work could still be seen after his death. Here are national and foreign pieces of dishware, stoneware, sculptures, sacred art, paintings and drawings from the artist. The castle is at the highest point of Aljezur. It is a privileged viewpoint of the village, and from the sea to the Monchique slopes. This was an important castle, so important that it is represented in Portugal's flag since the 15th century. The 7 castles in the National Shield are the 7 fortresses taken from the Moors during the conquest of the Algarve in the 13th century. This fortification had been built in the 10th century during the Islamic period, and when Aljezur's riverbank was still navigable and had commercial activity. At the village's highest point, the castle ensured protection to the people. One of Aljezur's most important remains of the Islamic presence is the Riba of Arifana. The Riba was a convent fortress, and its construction was ordered around 1125. Located at the Atalaya Point, at about 1 kilometer north of the Arifana beach, is the only Riba known in Portugal, and one of the 2 that are identified in the Iberian Peninsula. In between the remains preserved by the town of Aljezur, there is what would have been a prayer wall and a tower for the call to prayer. The silos of Barrada are one of the Islamic remains that we can find inside the village of Aljezur. It is a group of 9 silos found beside the elementary school and kindergarten of Aljezur. In 3 of these silos, pottery remains were gathered. Throughout the rural part of our tour, we find vegetation that is typical of the Mediterranean climate. The arbutus and the cistus, as well as the lavender and rosemary, are responsible for fresh and varied scents, more intense especially in the summer. This is a place full of stories that nobody knows whether they are true or not. That is where it takes its name from, Fountain of Lives. One of the legends that oral tradition has preserved tells that this fountain is really an underground passage to the castle, and that a Moorish princess loved by a Christian escaped through it during the Christian reconquest of Aljezur. The small river of Aljezur edges the village, continues along the valley, and waters in the ocean at the Amoreira beach. In times of the Islamic occupation, the river was navigable and there was a harbor in the village. Outside the village, right in the Sudoeste Alentejano and Costa Vicentina Natural Park, inhabit dozens of rare species. In the cliffs and crags near the sea, where the strong winds are not suited for trees or bushes, we can find at least 2 plants that are endemic species of the region. The Biscutella vicentina, with its apple-shaped leaves and yellow petals, and the Armeria royana, also known as thrift. In the surroundings of Aljezur, along the riverside, it is possible to observe over 100 species of birds. The Sudoeste Alentejano and Costa Vicentina Natural Park is one of the main migration corridors of birds traveling between Europe and North Africa, making Aljezur a reference point for bird watching. Next to the cliffs we find the white stork that nests in the sea crags. Otters live in the Aljezur River estuary. This is one of the last otter populations living in a sea habitat in Portugal. For being so rare, it is not easy to observe them. Almost at the end of the tour, we find a picnic spot. This is the perfect place to gather strength and plan a visit to the rest of the riches that Aljezur has to offer. The whole Aljezur County is rich in sea and country products, and the village is no exception. Along the coast, the bream, gilthead bream, and sea bass prevail. Most part of that fish that we find in the market or at the restaurants in the surroundings comes from the little harbor at Arifana. Costa Vicentina is also land of shellfish gatherers, men and women that catch the sea urchins, limpets, mussels, and goose barnacles. Essentials to the regional cuisine are pork meats, among which the cold cuts and the hunted wild boar stand out. But the most characteristic ingredient of Aljezur's cuisine is the sweet potato, which serves as a side dish to many plates and is the main ingredient found in desserts all over the region. The sweet potato of Aljezur is a product with protected geographical indication because only here we can find all the factors that make it unique. The climate in the meadows of Aljezur, Odisseis, and Rugil, and the quality of the soils help the cultivation of the sweet potato, where no chemical products are used. The sweet potato is rich in vitamins A and C. It is a source of iron and potassium, and rich in antioxidants. The stunning slate cliffs are the reference image of the beaches in the Aljezur County. Also, the Odisseis beach was chosen one of the 7 wonders, beaches of Portugal, in the cliff beaches category. Odisseis might as well be called a double beach. On one side the sea, and at the other side the riverbank. It's this double offer that makes Odisseis an excellent family beach, with the sea for the grown-ups and the riverbank for the kids. All Aljezur beaches are different. The Arifana and the Madu beaches are the surfers' first choice, while the Amoreira and the Monte do Clérigo beaches are sought by those who rather appreciate nature. The riverbank that goes through the village is different from a nature point of view from the one that goes along the other side of the castle. Here lies a riverside forest that is more shadowy and humid, which contributes to the preservation of nature. This is an excellent habitat for amphibian and reptiles, and with a bit of patience we can observe the Mediterranean tortoise, a protected species that lives in Aljezur. During the years of intense commercial and maritime activity until the 16th century, the vessels that transported products between Europe and the African coast sought for shelter in Aljezur. In the vicinity of the riverside harbor, there were the guest house, where traders stayed for the night, and the toll house. Many of the streets that descend the village's hillside give access to the river, where the harbor existed. Here came to be docked up to 10 vessels, but the progressive and natural silting of the riverside dictated the end of the port activity. The houses of the Aljezur village lay out in alleys that go along with the undulating of 3 hillsides. But after the 1755 earthquake that partially destroyed the village, a new mother church and a new village were built, east from the main hillside, in a much more flat and wide piece of land. This helped the old village to remain almost in its original layout, with little change in the sinuous path of the alleys. These are the circumstances, as well as nature and culture, which make Aljezur a unique destination in Algarve and in the Sudoeste Alentejano and Costa Vicentina Natural Park.